Hi there, I'm Claire, the founder of english-at-home.com and speakrealenglish.com, and this is the second video in the series to help you speak real natural English. These videos will help you improve your fluency, your vocabulary, your pronunciation, and your confidence. I'm going to show you what English native speakers do when they speak English so that you can copy them and sound more natural. So this is the second video, and this video is all about phrasal verbs in English. Now, phrasal verbs are really important because we use them a lot when we speak English, and they're typical of informal English. So when you use phrasal verbs, you'll sound more natural. So what is a phrasal verb? A phrasal verb is a verb followed by a particle. So for example, the verb take and the particle up create the phrasal verb take up. And we use take up to mean to start a new hobby, to take up a new hobby. Another example, the verb work followed by the particle out to create the phrasal verb work out. And that means to solve a problem or to do a calculation. Often phrasal verbs are quite logical. So for example, we turn up the volume, we make the volume higher, turn up. And we can also turn down the volume to make it less noisy, turn up, turn down. But sometimes phrasal verbs are not logical. So for example, I put on a coat, which means I wear a coat, put on, but the opposite isn't put off. You, in fact, take off a coat, put on and take off. So this is an example of not logical, illogical phrasal verbs. Very often you can have a different verb to replace the meaning of a phrasal verb. So for example, I could say to you, to put up with means to tolerate. So the more formal word is tolerate. But when we speak English, we tend to use phrasal verbs. I can't put up with his behavior means I can't stand his behavior. I hate his behavior. If you say, I can't tolerate his behavior, it sounds a bit strange. It sounds too formal for the conversation. So phrasal verbs are really important when you speak English. So now I'm going to show you the 4 different types of phrasal verbs and how you can learn them. Phrasal verbs with no object. A phrasal verb without an object means the phrasal verb can stand as it is. So for example, watch out, or I wanted to speak to her but she ran away. So there's nothing coming after the phrasal verb. Phrasal verb with object which you can separate. So this type of phrasal verb, you have an object. So for example, to work out a calculation, and the calculation is the object. And you can separate it. So you can say to work out a calculation, or you can say to work a calculation out. Another example is look up. So you can look up a word in the dictionary, or you can look a word up. Do you see what I mean? You can separate the object and the particle. But when this object is a pronoun, you must separate it. So for example, work it out, not work out it. Or look it up, not look up it. So pronouns are words like it or me or them. And when you have this type of phrasal verb where the object can come before or after the particle, when that object is a pronoun, it must always come before the particle. Look it up, work it out. Phrasal verb with object which comes after the particle. So with this type of phrasal verb, you have an object and it must always come after the particle. You can't separate it like in the second type. So for example, go into a room, not go a room into, but go into a room. And the fourth type, when you have three parts. So a phrasal verb with three parts is a phrasal verb like put up with. So you have put and then an up and then with, put up with. These types of phrasal verbs, they must stick together. You can't put anything between them. So put up with his behavior, not put up his behavior with. Another example, to look up to someone. It means to admire someone, not look up someone to. Look up to someone. How to learn phrasal verbs. So, how can you learn phrasal verbs? Well, the first thing you need to do is to see and hear phrasal verbs. Fortunately, in conversation, we often stress the particle so it's easier to hear. So, for example, who do you take after in your family? Or get on the bus. So you can actually hear the particle. It makes it easier to hear the entire phrasal verb. Obviously, you should ask someone if they use a phrasal verb which you don't understand. Ask them what it means. You should also read plenty of English to get some more phrasal verbs. Now, because phrasal verbs are conversational, you should also read conversational English. So read blog posts or read, for example, tabloid newspapers. Tabloid newspapers are those newspapers with the big headings, and they're often written in very conversational, informal English. Don't read academic English or very serious newspapers because you won't see lots of phrasal verbs there. The third thing you should do, check in a dictionary. When you see a new phrasal verb, make sure you understand it. The fourth thing that you can do is look at the particle to help you understand the meaning. So, for example, as I said before, often phrasal verbs are logical. So we say to turn up the volume. So if someone is speaking really, really quietly, you want them to speak up. You want them to increase the volume. We say, for example, to check in a hotel. When you arrive at a hotel, you check in. So when you leave a hotel, you check out. Understanding these particles will also help you even when the phrasal verb isn't logical. So we use phrasal verbs with up a lot. And sometimes this up can mean to increase. So for example, to add up numbers, 2 plus 2, you add up the numbers and you get a total of 4. So we can also say when prices become more expensive, prices go up. So when up means to increase, down means to reduce. So when the prices become less expensive, the price goes down. Or when, for example, you don't want to spend so much money or you don't want to eat so much, you can say to cut down. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Watch out for the third video in this series, How to Improve Your Pronunciation.